Hey, Neil McDonnell here. Welcome to LinkedIn Live. Our event for today, I'm going to get started a little bit with federal sales, how to be asking the right questions during these sales calls. But people take a few minutes to get in, so I'm going to wait a second as we go live and people are able to join and not miss out on the topic. But I did want to just introduce myself for those of you who don't know me already. Again, Neil McDonnell. I spent 20 years as a federal government contractor, owning a couple of small businesses after I got out of the Army, and sold the last one end of 2017. And I created the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. The reason for the GovCon Chamber of Commerce is so that I can help you learn to make more money, right? In the federal space, I say that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. But for a lot of us, the process is elusive at best, complete mystery at worst. And so I really try to push the process through the GovCon Chamber and bring those messages to you. So anyways, in the GovCon Chamber, we put out a ton of content. If you haven't had a chance to get to that, go to govconchamber.com and you'll find a couple of years of good content in there, all of it evergreen type content. So it's still very relevant because it's all in the government space. Most of it is around sales. 80-90% of it is around sales. How do I do some level of sales activity? The other thing is you can get more of this type of content from YouTube, where we have a channel out there. You'll find links to this on the Chamber website or on my LinkedIn profile. You'll just, in the contact section, you'll see links to that. But YouTube, we've got hundreds of videos out there. On podcasts, you can find us on iTunes or wherever. And we've got a podcast. We keep putting content out. We're putting a lot more content out in 2022. And then my favorite place, though, is LinkedIn. I have probably over 1,000 pieces of content that I put out on LinkedIn. So go look at my activity feed one day when you're bored and scroll down, or you can actually search for particular content around a need you might have and just filter it by maybe content I posted, and you'll be able to see that. So take a look at that. I'm going to get started here in just a second. I'm trying to get better at having an intro that gives you enough time to get on to the LinkedIn Live. One thing, again, to remind people, I do this daily, so 12 to 12:30 East Coast time. I've got a lot of topics I try to line up, so I'm not just, completely randomly babbling along for 30 minutes. So I try to line these topics up. But if you've got topics that are challenges that you're facing now, where you think these are pressing type questions, I'd love to turn those into live sessions as well, where I'm exploring a topic somebody is bringing to me, right? I know what you need to hear, but if you've got a particular one, throw it my way. Last thing I want to say before I get started is do me a favor, and in the chat, just so I can see who's coming in and other people can see who you are, go ahead and put in your company name and your core competency. I'd love to be able to see that myself later. And then for other people, it's great for them to see it. I've been watching a lot of kind of dialogue go back and forth. So, okay, I'm going to get started on today's topic. And today I really want to focus on a sales activity, sales meetings, and how to ask the right questions, or how to even prepare to ask the right questions. I've got notes right here, by the way, so I'm not just doing this completely blind. I'm trying to remind myself. So if you see me look there, I'm looking at notes. If you see me look there, I'm looking at chatting. And if you see me looking here, I'm looking at you. So let me get started with that. One of the things about asking questions, and I talk to people all the time about this when I'm advising them on doing call planning. If you're going to go into a meeting, frankly, whether it's a project meeting or a sales meeting, you should have a purpose. I like to say in project meetings, it's like, why are we here? What is our goal? Now, generally, if somebody did a good job, we would know that, right? There'd be an agenda and there'd be a purpose statement. The purpose of today's meeting is to do this or get this decision made or whatever it is. Well, in sales, it should be the same way. You want to be able to have an agreement with that other person, just a casual one. But at the beginning of a meeting, hey, this is what we're talking about, right? It's an intro call. You're going to tell me more about your program office, whatever it is. By doing that, all participants in a meeting drive towards that same purpose or an objective, what you're trying to achieve by the end of this call. When you have that, it allows you to then begin to prepare properly with questions to ask. Too many of us go in and we're either completely winging it, or we're just bringing a deck and talking off a deck, but we're not actually preparing questions. And that's what I want you to do. Is I want you to begin to think in your mind, how do I prepare? How do I write down just like I have these notes for me when I walk into a meeting, or when you walk into your next meeting, I want you to begin to think about, well, what are the 5 or 10 questions I should be asking so that I get the information out of this meeting that I want to get out. When I'm talking to the buyer or the program office, whatever, I'm able to get the information I want. Writing these questions down is just basic discipline. You remember how I said government contracting is not a secret, just a process. Part of the process is preparing for a meeting properly. So when you go into a meeting in sales, you're really trying to uncover a problem that is an implied need, right? They kind of see it as a problem. It's a small problem, et cetera. And through the questions you're going to ask, you're going to develop that into an explicit need. Or you're going to take a small problem and turn it into a big problem. That's the whole purpose of sales meetings, is you're trying to develop that problem to such a level where the buyer has to buy, they need to buy to solve that problem. So now we've got them acknowledging that. Then you can start talking about your solution, what your products or services do, so that is the answer to their challenges, their needs, or problems. And we don't want to start with a solution. Too many of us go in and say, hey, here's what we do and here's how we can help you. It's like, well, how do you even know what I need? And so the purpose of asking questions is to develop that need into an implied need, or into an explicit need from an implied need. So that's where I'm going to try to go with this. I did want to talk about sales from a methodology approach. I've been in the GovCon space 20 plus years, but I've been doing sales for 30 years. And I know I look really young for that, right? And I got 8-year-old twin boys, so I operate really young. But I've got 30 years of sales experience across many different sales. I've done door-to-door vacuum cleaner sales and other transactional sales like that. I've done commercial sales, and I've done federal sales, right? Nonprofit and state and local, but really commercial and federal. Those are the 2 big markets. And for the last 20 years, it's been federal sales. And throughout that time, I've developed my skills in sales by continuous training, continuous learning, continuous attending of events. And the one that I've latched onto is one called spin selling. And that's what I'm going to be talking to you about. This methodology is the one it's so ingrained in me that every meeting I go into, I'm asking questions from this perspective. An example of asking the right questions is, well, let me go into spin selling first. You might see it back here. But spin selling stands for, it's an acronym, right? Spin, S is situation questions, P are problem questions, I are implication questions, and N is needs payoff, so spin. And I want to walk you through first what they are, what those mean, and then begin to talk a little bit about how you can prepare for the next meeting by asking questions in this framework. So situational questions are pure factual questions. And I'm going to use IT. Let's just say I'm an IT company, and I'm going to use that as an example while I talk to you, right? I want to be able to ask questions related to whatever I sell from a situational or factual standpoint. Those questions are, how many users do you have? What kind of servers do you have? Are they Oracle? Are they Microsoft-based servers? Tell me more about the type of equipment people use to connect to your database system, whatever it is. What was the last contract for this type of service? Those are all factual questions. And the thing to keep in mind about factual questions these days is no buyer expects you to come to them and ask them factual questions. Some of them you have to. How many users you have probably has to be a question you're having with the buyer, right? That's a more private piece of information. But when was the last contract vetted for this kind of service? That's out there. That's a situational question. Not only can you get answered probably on the internet, but you can go talk to somebody else and get that answer before you go talk to the buyer. And let's pause for a second. When I talk about the buyer, I mean the program office, the what I call focuses of dissatisfaction, the people who have the actual problem. And so when I'm asking situational questions, I can ask anybody else. It's totally okay to ask anybody else. But this buyer, the person who's got the need, I really want to be driving at more complex questions. And so factual questions you want to be getting from somebody else, but they're necessary in order for you to move sales forward. So that's the first type, situational questions. And I encourage you not to ask those questions in meetings unless you want to ask them strategically or they're the only person who can answer. So I explained the latter, but the former, when I say strategically asking, sometimes you want to ask questions just to get them talking, just to begin to build a relationship. And talking about golf is not related to sales. But if you talk about their user base, even though you might have got it from somewhere else, you can ask questions like that that begin to lead you to the problem questions you want to ask. So let's talk about problem questions. And by the way, just a quick sidebar. As I'm saying any of this, if you have questions, you want me to clarify something, go ahead and put it in the chat. I'm trying to look over here. And if I see something like I didn't go too far into it, I'll try to respond to it. Otherwise, I'll do it at the end. So problem questions, and I said this is the whole purpose of a sales call or a sales meeting, is you're trying to uncover a problem, a small problem, an implied need, right? And turn it into a big problem. No one is going to buy for a small problem. They will buy for a big problem. And if your solution, your products or services address big problems, then you need to help the buyer understand they have those big problems. And we'll get to that in a second. So problem questions are designed to ask questions that develop that need they have. Using the IT example, if I sit there and think about, hey, we can help our customers migrate to, a new data center, have all new servers and the fanciest and fastest equipment out there or something. Well, I need to get them to acknowledge that the equipment they have today is inadequate. And so problem questions I might ask, and this is going a little bit into the IT side of it or something, but I might ask them a question about, with all the concerns about cybersecurity out there, how does that impact your current servers? Are they at a stage that are easily upgradable? Can you share some of that information about, or can you share some of what you guys run into on these, what we used to call in the old days, Patch Tuesday? I don't know what it's called now, but this idea where we're constantly having to upgrade our servers. We can talk about that. I can begin to ask other questions like that, but the idea is to develop the problem question into, or not develop the problem question, develop the conversation around, tell me about what you're going through. So they're probably running in, if they've got servers 5 years or older, they're probably running into big issues with, maybe they're not supported as much by the vendors anymore. Maybe they're slow or they're not being provisioned correctly. Maybe they just take up real estate, right? Maybe my question is more along the lines of, where are you guys on your cloud transition? A lot of people have legacy apps. You're going to have to maintain the servers. If you maintain the servers, what kind of security concerns do you have? And a lot of patching and maintaining the network operating system, or whatever it's called, right? Is these are things that, as an IT company, could be seen as problems that they're running into. I used to have people who would work inside the wire, and I would teach them to listen when you're in a meeting. No matter what you're talking about, when somebody else is talking, it's really important you keep listening. When you have multiple project teams in like a customer update or something, if somebody's complaining about the servers being slow, hey, let me know, because we can solve that. And I can come back in and say, hey, Bob, I hear that, you guys are been having some server issues that run into, that impact what we're doing. Can we talk about this? And I would get them to really just complain about that problem. And this leads into the next question next set of questions is implication, right? So we have situational questions, problem questions, and now you have implication questions. The purpose of implication questions really is to take that small problem and turn it into a big problem. And so if they have slow servers, let's say, then the slow servers are slowing down, let's say they have servers that kind of keep crashing or something. Well, if those servers are crashing, that impacts IT. And so what I need to do is expand that and get them to see the huge impact to a server crashing. So if a server is crashing and it has an email system on it, right? Well, so what's the impact to the organization when the server crashes and then email crashes, basically because the server crashes? Are you getting a lot of complaints from like departments? Oh yeah, they just never stop complaining. It's a big deal. Well, if they can't do their job on email, is it impacting a broader mission set beyond that? I'm trying to take this problem further out. When you think about the servers are crashing, they have to come down and up. Do they crash in the middle of the day, or do they crash at the end of the night? Kind of thing. Oh, so they typically crash like after work, which is horrible, because then, we have to call people in. It's this emergency. Well, how's that impact morale? Like, do you guys put on a 24/7 group of people to support it? Or do you sit there and call people back from home and their families at dinner time or bedtime and bring them back in? No, we bring them back in, and sometimes I got to come in. So now I'm trying to get them to think about the problem from a from a personnel problem. People don't leave jobs for money. They talk about, right, people leave jobs because they're not happy, they're not satisfied. And if you keep pulling me in after I just worked a full day and I got to come back in, there's a problem. And in my head the whole time I'm thinking, hey, we've got this whole system that if these servers crash, these ones come back up like an automatic spare tire. If your car gets a flat, somehow miraculously another tire gets on there automatically while you're driving, and the flat tire goes in the back, and later on we can fix it at our convenience and then replace them. They call that redundancy, right? Is making sure you have redundant systems, but maybe Bob doesn't have that. So this implication is I'm trying, and that's my solution. So I'm trying to get them to see all the different impacts that are in there. This is the power area for questions, right? Anybody can ask situation questions. How many servers do you have? How many people do you have? Anybody can really ask problem questions. Implication questions are where you're now doing two main things. You're really taking that customer to the needs standpoint. And when I say need, I mean they're getting closer and closer to buying. And if you watched the live session I did last week, I talk about how on the procurement life cycle, you want to push to the left, shift to the left of the RFI phase or the market research phase, because that's the formal phase. But if you shift to the left, now you're having conversations with Bob about his needs and what's going on. And maybe you can start pushing that opportunity where you want it to go, or you get Bob to think about your solutions, your way of looking at it, your service level agreements, any of that kind of stuff. You're getting him to think about it before it even becomes a formal opportunity coming out. And so these implication questions, by asking them, you're getting him to not only see how big the problem is, but you're also getting him to see how many people could benefit if he invests in the Neil McDonnell redundancy system kind of thing, right? And so by getting him to see that, this leads into the last set of questions, is needs payoff. Needs payoff questions basically are around, if we solve these challenges and problems you're having, what would happen? Well, all of a sudden we would reduce overhead expense because we wouldn't be bringing people in. And actually, we've been paying that contractor extra money because these servers crash. We actually now pay them to have an on-call person, and whenever that person's coming in, they're 2.5 time or whatever, right? So there's an extra cost there that we can get rid of because we don't have to do it in the off hours, and any equipment management they can do during the business hours. So that's one thing. We're able to sit there and just from a trust factor, increase our reliability to our business customers. If Bob's the director of IT in the Army and his job is to keep servers up, well, now the people who are running the business units, whether it's internal office business units or even the war fighters out in the field, now because his servers are up, these people are able to trust that they can do their job because Bob is ensuring the servers are up. And needs payoff is designed to kind of do the yin and the yang, if you will, of implication questions. Implication questions are to get you to see how big this problem really is. And you're not doing anything wrong here. And what I'm trying to say is, like, you're not doing any smoke and mirrors or whatever it's in there. What we don't do sometimes as salespeople, and what I'm saying you should do is, you should help Bob see how big that problem is. Your company built a service or a product around problems just like this. But if all we do is kind of keep bringing the solution in, we haven't helped Bob see how big that problem is. And so implications is building those problems up to a really big height, an explicit need that he knows he has to solve it. And needs payoff is where we're talking about. And in federal sales, this is where we're now vetting some solution ideas with Bob before our competitors are even in there. We're talking about, hey, we were thinking about doing this with Google Cloud. Oh no, we're not doing Google Cloud. We only do Amazon, or we only do Microsoft. So, all right, sounds good, Bob. That was our second choice, kind of thing. I mean, we're vendor agnostic. We can do whatever. But you have a chance to vet solutions, and needs payoff is helping them understand that if our solution addresses those explicit needs, that huge problem, what's the needs payoff to the organization? And in federal sales, one tip I'll give you just related to needs payoff is you always want to drive it to the farthest reaches, to the edge. And what I mean by this is if you're selling to the Department of Veterans Affairs, their mission in the VHA, at least Veterans Healthcare or Veterans Health Administration, theirs is veterans healthcare. And so you want to be talking to healthcare needs. We would fix this and we would be able to deliver better healthcare. And you should be able to tie what you're offering to the VA to the veterans as it relates to healthcare, or in the Army to the warfighter in the field. If you can't make that tie, then you need to relook at your solution and why it's best for this agency. Because the whole purpose of buying anything, products, services, is to improve their ability to deliver on the mission. So just keep tying back what you offer to that area. So the last thing I wanted to mention as it relates to asking these questions, right, is you don't want to just hammer them like a detective. You're trying to have a conversation. So when you write these questions down, they're designed to just serve as a guide for your talking. You just want to be able to look in. What I love to do, by the way, when I go into meetings is, hey, Bob, I wrote down 7 or 8 questions I'm hoping to be able to discuss with you. Not ask you, but to discuss with you. We're trying to have a conversation. So my question is a leading question. It rarely is a closed question. Yes and no is closed question. It's an open question designed to have a conversation. He'll give an answer. Can I pull a thread on that? And you can explore that. And then you've got another question that's related to maybe another problem. You also don't need to ask all of the questions in one meeting. In federal sales, the life cycle really is 12 to 24 months. If it's less than 12 months, or even inside the 6-month window, then you're doing less sales and more about just responding to opportunities. And so, but when you have more time, you have the ability to come back and say, well, let me go away and then come back to you again. Let me go away and maybe put together a mini white paper for you guys. So I want to give you a challenge based on what you're hearing. And I want to look down here and see if there's any questions you have, let me know. But the challenge I have for you is think about the very next meeting you're going to go into. And frankly, I would do it with a business meeting or with a sales meeting, whatever's your very next meeting. And think about 2 or 3 problem questions you can ask. And what you want to do is think about what your company sells, what your product is or your service is, and what solution, what problem that solution addresses, right? And then write 2 or 3 problem questions. 2 or 3 problem questions that you can hear their response and what they'll be talking about will align directly to what your company offers and what you're trying to talk to them about. So I would encourage you to do that. That's my challenge there for you. I'm going to wrap up this topic. So again, just put any questions. I got a couple other notes. So I'll give you an example though, on a problem question again for me. If I was doing that, I was thinking about if I sold data, right? Say I have a company that does data analytics, data science, engineering type stuff, and we want to address the customer's data concerns. And really right now, if you don't know this, data is just everywhere. We're really good at bringing data together and being able to do something with that data. So I might say to Bob something like, hey, Bob, I understand, hey, Bob, in my conversations with other agencies, one of the biggest concerns I hear is their ability to deal with all the siloed data. Siloed is a normal term Bob would be familiar with, but all this siloed data, deal with it in a way that they could bring it together and turn it into actionable information that would give a lot of people situational awareness, as well as leaders the ability to make decisions faster based on the data they already have. And so my question to you is, what's your vision? What's your organization, your office, your command's vision for dealing with all the mass amount of data that you're probably getting? What's your vision for that over the next couple of years? That's an example of a problem question where I'm trying to uncover what I'm really trying to get him to do is to go, I don't know, right? I believe he doesn't know. And I believe he's got a lot of data out there. And so many of the customers are just not knowing what to do with it. But I'm hoping he goes, yeah, and another great one for me is if he says, we don't really have a vision or strategy. Well, that's what we do, Bob, and so I won't say that, but that's where I'm trying to get him to do is to go, I do need a vision. I do need a strategy. I do need to think about this disparate data. And so what I would expect him to start talking about is, well, we got 3 main data repository type things. And so these guys really got it normalized and they're good to go. These ones I'm trying to bring in. Like, okay, now I can, just that one question that I prepared, I can start pulling some threads in there. So, okay, so I'm looking here. What would you recommend for additional reading on selling spin techniques in reference to your topic? Well, first off, buy this book, Spin Selling, Neil Rackham. And I'll try to put a link in the comments after this event so that people can find it on Amazon. But that book was written in 1988. I've been doing, again, sales for a long time. I got introduced to Neil Rackham in mid-late 90s when I started doing a lot more government sales. But that book there is hands down the best book because it helps you understand this idea of what is sales. Let me just push another one. I'm checking my time here. Another thought for you to keep in mind is that, now bear with me on this concept, but what I describe sales as, I want to find a pain in Bob's side and I stick a stick in there and I roll it around until it hurts so much he buys, right? It's kind of a gruesome example, but my point is I'm trying to identify a pain that he has that I can solve. And then by asking these problem and implication questions, I'm making the problem bigger and bigger, and pretty soon it's like, oh my God, it's so painful. It's so explicit. It's so obvious that I'll do anything you tell me, doctor, to solve the pain. I'll do anything you tell me, Neil, to solve the pain. You are not selling inferior products and you are not selling inferior services. And so what you're selling is something Bob needs, or your version of Bob, right? Sales is about helping Bob realize that and understand the severity of the problem. When you do that, then your solution will make so much sense. And so I would definitely read that book. And then when they talk about, if you think about a scale, right? And let's say this hand, the one with the ring is the buy, and the one with the no ring is no buy. So if I sit there and put something on, it's like, oh, it's too expensive. I lower it down. And now you see that this one is the one that's going to win. But if I start stacking problem questions down here on this ring hand, right? Pretty soon I'm doing implication questions. And now it's so obvious with so many things here and only one objection that I need to buy, right? That's just sales. And so this book really goes into it. So definitely get that. So yep, Rafa, I'll put that on there.